Hi there, Bambi here with another line transit, and today we go into the 51-3. Now, third line day, I have to confess to something here. It is Saturday, the 6th of April. Our clocks changed last Sunday, as they did for most of Europe. And I've been saying that I was in GMT and I was going to stay in GMT, but apparently I haven't been in GMT, not as far as the Sun and Earth transit go. I have for the moon, but I use two different sources for my timings. So I have this wonderful ephemeris that I use. It's so handy, it's so brilliant. But it only gives timings for the moon transits. So when I come to look at the sun and the timings for the sun or any of the other planets, I use an online as my body graph for the timings for that. And I didn't notice that it had switched to local time. So where I've been saying GMT, staying in GMT, actually I'm not. My gate of continuity is flipped and it's doing its or not. And so we are in BST, in British Summertime, which is GMT +1. So sorry about that. I hope it doesn't cause too much confusion. And that, I mean, that's where we are. So BST until October, I guess. So the 51-3 is called adaptation. How appropriate. And it's a lovely name for a third line, really, isn't it? It's that sort of, as third lines are so adaptable and they are resilient. It's part of their mechanic, it's part of their design. They can show us so much about the nature of bouncing back because they're built for it. You know, it's a lovely thing. I have some wonderful third line friends, and hanging out with them is such fun because they're always looking for something new to bump into, whether it's a new shop to go to, or even a new conversation, a new book, or something more physical. There's always that sort of excitement or anticipation that life is going to bring them something else to bump into. So in this 51-3, we have people with a very powerful capacity to adapt in this life. This is the life-sustaining awareness that thinks on its feet and thus creates opportunities. The power of spontaneity in times of challenge. So the third line here is leaping into the void, foolishly perhaps, but in that leaping, it finds that it can somehow adapt. And out of that comes knowledge, and out of that, comes the landing on the other side. It arrives at gate 25. It arrives at the door of the shaman or the priestess, and they will not be turned away because their initiation is complete. Ra says that it is not your destiny to leap into the void correctly and die tragically, which must be a huge relief for all of you 51-3s out there. There can be a tendency for withdrawal rather than adaptation. And third lines, while they're shocking everybody else, they can get deeply shocked themselves. They can get so shocked that they pull away. And they might not be prepared for what is there. And they get so shocked that they sort of freeze and then they do nothing. And this can actually save their life. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. In this third line, we get to the ability to learn from one's mistakes. The third line who truly adapts, even though they don't maybe know where the shocks are coming from or why they're coming, because this is lower trigram, remember. But the shocks, they do come and they're a surprise. It's like, oh, look what's bumped into me now, kind of thing. And yet the third line can find a way to dance itself out of difficulty. The ego likes to rest. Remember, there's always that work rest thing within the ego, and it wants to rest because it wants to stay alive. It knows that the heart can't keep beating at that really high speed that we go into when there's a shock around, the fight or flight that's coming out from that splenic, the 57, or the intuition to stay alive, which is the grounding force here. But the heart can't keep going. So there has to be an adaptation there in order to protect the integrity of the ego. Because the ego can get very destabilized in times of challenge. And generally, we find in this life that we are actually only dealing with the mundane side of shock. Unless we are in a I don't know, maybe in a job or something where we are constantly open to the shocks coming in, and they're big shocks. For most of us, they're not always that big. We might get little shocks all day long, but so, oh, that phone call shocked me, or whatever, depending. I mean, it can be a little tiny thing like that. And hopefully our shocks will always be so small because we only have to deal with the mundane quality. The 51.3 can often be all right with that. It has the ability to adapt to that. But sometimes when there's a radical change and things are really deeply, profoundly shocking, the 51.3 falls apart. So always there's the two parts of this. There's the 51.3 who can adapt and the 51.3 who falls apart. So if there's an earthquake, for example, this is not the 51.3 that you want to be standing next to. We'll leave that to the third line in the gate of crisis, maybe. So the 57.3. So this is the 57th gate, the intuitive awareness, that intuition. And here we have acuteness. This represents a perfected intelligence and intuition. This is the capacity to adapt to life. So again, adaptation coming through, genetic continuity. This is the survival of the species. This is the ability to adapt to life in the now. It's adapting to any threats to life, or it's keeping that potential of being alive going, the potential of the perfected form, the potential of penetrating awareness, because the 57 leads to 3 other gates. The gate of power, which is that gate of being alive, the perfected form in gate 10 in the G center, and then the awareness in gate 20 up in the throat. All of that is rooted in the capacity of this third line. However, it is still a third line, and it can have the flavor of trial and error. It can make bonds, break bonds. It can be irresponsible. And in this particular integration channel, it can adapt for itself, for its own survival, leaving others behind, in a way, not really caring about others, because it's not actually really built to care about the others, not in this integration channel. It's not equipped to deal and look after others as well as it does for itself. Integration has the keynote of self-empowerment. It is designed to be self-absorbed. It is designed to be selfish. It's an intuition that is for them alone, it's a knowing that is for them alone, unless and until there is either gate 28 in the splenic system or 38 in the root, or the channel that is in their aura. It might actually be in their own design. But if it comes into their aura or it's in a transit, then that changes that keynote of empowerment, self-empowerment, into empowerment. So all of a sudden, then it kind of opens them up to the potential of their intuition and their knowing being for other people instead of just for themselves. It changes integration into something more accessible, into something that can sort of integrate more, really. And then it is, as I say, more empowering rather than self-empowering. So the 57.3, it grounds the 51.3 through its intuitive ability to stay alive in the now. When we jump into the void, we do it alone. It's that old saying, I think, of that, we always meet our death on our own. We can't go through that door with anyone else. But if we're staying grounded there in that first 57.3, being able to adapt to all the potentials of being alive and staying alive, then that really gives some support to the 51 who is going through that initiation. So the moon today, we have gate 63, and this is at 0637 BST. The head center gate. This is that brings us doubts, it brings us questions, and it brings more doubts and more questions, and it can be very loopy in its quality. And you feel a pressure maybe to get your doubts answered, to get those questions answered, and you want it in a kind of logical way. It's not necessarily doubts about everything, because we also have the confusion, which is a similar thing other side. It's the abstract circuitry as opposed to this logic circuitry here in gate 63. So it's doubts and questions about the logical feasibility of taking us as a species through into the future. Look around. I'm not answering that question. Gate 22 at 1539 is the gate of openness and grace. The openness and grace of gate 22, which can so easily flip over and be closed and disgraceful. This gate in the solar plexus, which must operate according to its moods and in the right timing, of course, very, very important. So how does it feel to you if you're supposed to be doing something and you just don't feel like it? What do? How do you deal with that? How does that make its way into your experience? And gate 36. Now this is just tipping over into tomorrow. This is at 20 to 1 tomorrow morning. And in gate 36, you know, Neptune is already here. Neptune veils everything. And you can explore it for yourself. Can you actually feel the energy of crisis coming through here? Is there any focus for it? Or maybe not. And we don't have that much longer to experience this Neptune energy. You know, it comes out for a little while. But the theory tells us that if Neptune is in a gate, it doesn't matter what else comes in, it's all veiled. There is the possibility of mastering it, transcending it, and the veils part, but who knows whether that's actually happening or not. And it's not until we move out of that Neptune energy that we have the chance, especially in gate something like 36, which is experiential, which is, it has to be looked at in the past in order to get those lessons in the now. And then, whoa, we have some time maybe to wait until we can look back and go, that's what that was about. But what's your experience? I mean, this is the theory that I'm giving you here. What's your experience? So this is our 51.3 for today. And I just would also like to say before we finish off that I'm really grateful that you watch my transit report every day. I really appreciate the time that you give to this and your energy. It really does. That gives me such a thrill when I see that so many people have watched it and that there's the odd comment that comes in. So thank you very much for your support in this. And I will see you tomorrow when we look at the 9-4. And until then, as you know what I'm going to say next, go gently, be kind to yourself. And yes, on this third line day in BST, I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.